Good evening, everyone. We will start with our Shanti Mantra and continue on the topic of discussion. Continue from where we left last class and go a little deeper into that, to the details. Gather yourself, take a deep breath, feel the body, feel your presence right now. This moment. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaveryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. So, if we talk about the process of spiritual liberation, that means liberating the self, which is the spirit, from its various structures of bondage. It's something like how a caterpillar weaves a cocoon and is imprisoned by it, right? Something like that. But here, it is a cognitive error. The sense of self experiencing the bondage, the self experiencing the bondage, that is you and me, when we experience the bondage in various ways, the experience of bondage, the experience of limitation, in other words, the experience of samsara, in layers and layers of various patterns of struggle. This, it's happening on so many levels, and it's a very ingrained habit pattern. It's nothing but a cognitive habit. So that is what is meant by the word kosha. Most of you might have heard about the term pancha kosha, the 5 koshas, the five levels of embodiment. Annamaya kosha, the physical body made of food. Pranamaya kosha, the energy body made of the 5 pranas and all that. Manomaya kosha, the encasement of the thought structures, mind, memory, etc. Vijnanamaya kosha, the encasement of the decision making faculty, the cognitive and perceptive faculty, in which we also have the sense of self, individuality, in association with so many other things. Vijnanamaya kosha. Usually in all these paperback books, it is written as intellectual sheath, no? Physical sheath, the foot sheath, the vital sheath, the mind sheath, the intellectual sheath. And then there is Anandamaya kosha, which is usually translated as the blissful sheath, and somebody calls it the spiritual body, soul, and all that. Those are all misnomers. Anandamaya kosha is basically blissful ignorance. Anandamaya kosha is the encasement of the force of avidya called avarana. Okay. So these 5 levels of embodiments, which is nothing but 5 layers of cognitive error. It is a cognitively sustained levels of embodiment and sense of limitation that has been imposed upon ourselves, that we impose upon ourselves purely out of the force of habit, sustained by the fundamental ignorance. The entire structure of habit, the cognitive habit of self-limitation, is sustained by the fundamental ignorance. It is all built on ignorance. The entire individuality and the life that surrounds individuality is built on the power of ignorance. It is not built on any, it is not built on any great spiritual purpose or something. All purpose is within the sphere of ignorance. All your purposes, worldly purpose, spiritual purpose, noble purpose, ignoble purpose, everything is within the shell of ignorance. So out of ignorance, it is like you go into sleep, get disconnected from the world, and then get projected into the world of dream. So the entire dream world, no matter how colorful the dream world may be, it is sustained by the darkness of sleep. Exactly in the same way, this current waking state that we are experiencing right now is also sustained by that primordial sleep called ignorance, avarana shakti, maya, avidya. There's a subtle difference between maya, avidya. It's a very terse philosophical subject. Mula vidya, tula vidya, and all that. So let's not go into all that. Basically, avidya, right? So within this dream called samsara, there is a process of waking up from this samsara, is the process of moksha, right? Liberation of the self. It takes some time. We have discussed a lot about it. It takes some time to arrive at the goal of liberation, arrive at a point of clarity where you understand how valuable liberation is compared to all the other little goals and the little targets that you might achieve within the realm of struggle, within the realm of this dream, within the realm of samsara. So of all the possibilities within samsara, the possibility of getting out of samsara is more valuable when you weigh liberation against all the possibilities in bondage. No, you can be, it's something like this. This completely outweighs it. It's like somebody is in a jail. No, if you go to a jail, like we see in the movies, there are some who are really suffering. So within the jail, there are gangs, then there are gang leaders. The one who is having a better favor with the jailer, the one who is having a better comforts and who is calling the shots, who is trying to live like a king inside the jail. It's like you are in a iron cage or silver cage or a golden cage, they say, right? So similarly, all this is there. So within the jail, you can have a horrible life or a better life. So as long as you are in the jail, of course, one must try to have a more comfortable life within the jail as long as you are in the jail. So that is important. But what is more important in that process? Should one forget about the possibility of getting out of the jail? So if you weigh all your possibilities of achievements, your little achievements that you could get inside the jail, when you weigh all of them against the possibility of becoming free from the jail, which one is preferable? Which one is more intelligent? Right? So can any kind of a goal inside the jail, can it match up with the goal of becoming free from the jail, getting out of the jail, the freedom? Then you might come to the jail to visit somebody and go out. That's a different story. I don't want to overstretch the example. Basically, let us compare this. The jail, freedom from the jail. So freedom from the jail is completely another story. It's completely another dimension. It is not comparable to any of the things that you might achieve inside the jail as a prisoner, right? Similarly, liberation is completely another story. It is not any of the possibilities that you can dream of achieving in time. That is why it is called, uh, in Mundaka Upanishad, it says, Nasti akrita kritena. That main the point is about this. So when we understand this, the whole point of living, so all the possibilities that you have right now, all the faculties that we have right now, all the resources that we have right now in terms of the body, in terms of the knowledge, in terms of mind, in terms of the vitality, the power of being able to, the power that sustains our livelihood, the power that keeps us alive and lively, right? So all this, the vitality, the knowledge, the experiences, the memories, the collected impressions over time, the karma, the papa, punya, and then the physical body, and the knowledge, and all the satsanga, dussanga, the good company, the bad company, all that we have can be seen as a resource which we can use to get us ready for liberation. Is there a way to gather all our resources, personal resources, karmic resources, psychological resources, physical resources, the possibilities, the opportunities? Is there a way to gather our entire being together in towards this goal of liberation, either knowingly or unknowingly? So there are some people who may not understand liberation, but they have some kind of a shraddha. So they still keep doing things. They are, something attracts them. They don't understand, but something attracts them. The stories, every culture, we preserve the stories about liberation. All the cultures in the world preserve the mystic freedom or enlightenment or liberation through various stories. It is embedded within the cultural folklores, in the stories, in the religious stories, in the mythology, in everything. This is embedded in that. So it appeals to the any story that contains within itself the story of liberation from bondage. That story appeals to the unconscious in such a spontaneous way that that is not logically, that is not logically decipherable. You cannot know why it does that. We don't know. Even if you may not understand, when you hear a story, when you hear about that, when you are a child and then you hear about the tapasya, the story of uh, the yogi, the saint Dhruva, story of Dhruva, and how he went as a small child to meditate on Narayana, then how he became, then the granny will show you that when she tells the story, your parents or granny will show you that star, Dhruva Nakshatra. See, he did all this tapasya, he became that star. Then he never wanted anything. There are so many ways of presenting the goal of liberation in a way that appeals to the mind that is still within ignorance. We always try to understand something that is totally new. Always we try to understand that in terms of what is already familiar. So that is why all our spiritual stories, the itihasas, the puranas, even from foreign cultures, many stories, they all try to convey to our subconscious, convey to this unconscious, that sleeping self inside us, to convey to that deepest part of us the story of liberation through various models, through various symbolism, and through various visualizations of using the things that are already familiar to us, right? So there is this beautiful story uh, of a of a great yogi who was just a cowherd boy before, and sage Narada meets him he was a cattle herder, no? So he had a lot of buffaloes and he was taking care of the buffaloes. So when Sage Narada went through that village, he saw this guy and he saw the samskara. Somehow he could see, because Narada was a great rishi with divine perception, he could see there is something with this guy. And he talks to him and all that. Somehow he wanted him to get into the contemplation, into meditation, So he tries to talk to him about, and something appeals to him, but he says that, I'm so dull, I don't understand. He must have been a great yogi in his past life, but somehow because of getting off track, he has not finished it, what we call as yoga brashta, that is talked about in the Bhagavad Gita. So he is a yoga brashta. So Sage Narada could see that, and so he said, why don't you meditate on something? He tries to tell you, but he doesn't understand. I don't understand. Narada says, let us see what is his samskara. And he says, tell me, what is your most favorite thing? And he shows one of those big buffaloes that he had. I recently read about a buffalo in Haryana, Gurugram or somewhere in Haryana, that is worth more than 1.5 crores or something. It's a he buffalo. They use it for mating. It's supposed to be a very pedigree kind of a buffalo breed. So probably he had one of that. So he said, this buffalo, this huge one, he's my favorite. And I love him very much. I take care of it. It always amazes me when I look at this buffalo. Then Narada said, so why don't you, no, I will take care of the buffaloes, whatever, the buffaloes will be fine. Why don't you go into that cave and meditate? Think that you are that buffalo. Meditate on the buffalo. Say, Bhaisoham, I am buffalo. Right? So he went there and said some great, because in this culture we always have great respect for rishis and saintly people. So he said, okay, this is a great saintly man. And somehow, because of Sage Narada's vibrations, he was impressed by him in a very deep unconscious way, because he had that samskara from past life. And also we have Shraddha, and generally in the culture, when a saintly person asks you to do something, even if you don't understand, we generally do it out of good faith, thinking that it must be good for me in some way. So we just trust them and do it. So that good habit was there. It's there in this culture still. So in many cultures it is there. So that guy went and he agreed to do that. And then he went and sat and brought in all his love for that buffalo and started repeating, Bhaisoham, Bhaisoham. I am the buffalo, I am the buffalo. So he went very deep into the meditation because he had that spark in him from past life. So after 2 days or 3 days, Sage Narada says, hey, come out. Now come out of meditation. He says, I cannot come out. I am huge. The cave of the wall is too small. I have these horns, they are not letting me. I am very huge now for the entrance of the cave. Then Sage Narada understood he has attained Savikalpa Samadhi. And then he said, now say Shivoham. And then he tells him, initiates him, and then tells him to repeat Shivoham. And then, according to the story, he understood that when he said Shivoham, immediately all the ignorance went away and he realized his true nature. So, as the Ishvara, right? So, that is what the story says. So, here it points to so many things on so many levels. So, when we are trying to gather ourselves, so this cattle herd person, where this person, this yogi we talked about now, what he did is called upasana, right? Contemplation, upasana. That's what in the 5 steps that we discussed in the last classes, invocation, adoration, dedication, contemplation, and realization. These are the 5 steps we discussed. And I also mentioned that it is connected with, it is based on the concept of karma, upasana, jnana. Right? So what this cowherd guy did was upasana. Right? Because he was already ready for upasana. He was already doing his duty and all that. He was doing his job and he was very relaxed about it. He did have some punya from past samskara, and he had the kindling of the spark, and he had the grace from a great rishi like Narada, and he could right away go into upasana. So, and then once the mind was ready with upasana, all it took was just one word to make him realize the self. Just Shivoham, that was enough. And he could realize the jnana, right? So this process of gathering ourselves at all levels of functioning, the sense of self that we have is scattered on so many levels. In each, it's scattered on so many directions at so many levels. In each level, it is scattered in so many directions. In the physical level, we are scattered in so many ways in terms of the disturbances in the vata pitta kapha, then the disturbances, then uh, the various biological cellular memory and the habit, the habit formations that are stored in our physical memory that makes us do things in a certain way, right? Then what we call as the gut and all that, the gut, the mind in the gut, they say. So that is there, and then and each one is pushing us, and because of the chaotic lifestyle that we have, it is scattered in so many ways. So living the life according to dharma can help us, according to the Ayurveda, according to yoga, hatha yoga, practice of hatha yoga, and all those will help us to gather this scattered self at the body level. Then we do have to do pranayama, japa, etc. And then swadharma anusthana. That will help us to gather ourselves that is scattered at the vital or the prana level and at the mind level. And then the proper study, swadhyaya, Ishvara pranidhana, what we call as, dedicating the results of our actions to the universal being, to Ishvara, that will help us gather ourselves at the manomaya and the vijnanamaya, right? So when we do all that, that is called, all this is karma. So when you say karma, upasana, jnana, invocation, adoration, dedication. I also explained in the end of the last class about it need not necessarily be I would recommend at this stage, if you don't remember, to go ahead and watch the last class and then come back to this. It's there in YouTube. So this invocation, adoration, and dedication is basically karma. Karma, dharma, both are same here. Okay. So karma does not mean only Vaidika karma, because those who are not doing Vaidika karma, what are they doing? So you are doing what you are cut out for. You are doing what destiny brings to you, plus in the process of achieving your goals, your goals, goals that are redefined according to your spiritual understanding and according to dharma, according to ethics, according to righteousness, in line with yama, niyama, etc. So this spiritually redefined way of life with all the appropriate goals that are not against ethics, all right? So this way of living, you can say as Swadharma, playing your part in the scheme of things, doing your duty in the family, in the society, the duty to yourself, self-care, all that comes together. And there is as I told, we already discussed, it requires a lot of systematic study and discussion to understand what is duty and what is unnecessary, because our lives have been permeated with a lot of fake values from so many levels. There is a lot of cultural interactions, there is a lot of useless information from the internet, and there is a lot of loose teaching that is going on that is not in line with the tradition. Each guru telling his own stuff, and there's a lot of advertising to impress you with spiritual knowledge. So everybody is frantically busy in selling themselves, selling their school, selling their ashram, selling their spiritual, their version of spirituality. Everybody, it has become like a spirituality has become like a club. Everybody wants membership, right? So they're very busy trying to impress you to get the membership. Each one has his own version trying to impress you. Because of all this excessive information, chaos, cacophony of information, we are stuck with so many fake values. So it requires a good amount of swadhyaya, and self-reflection. Swadhyaya and self-reflection are two different things. I have already discussed. Swadhyaya is study of Shastra and listening to discourses and a proper way, etc. Self-reflection is something else. Self-reflection is sitting and analyzing and see the various assumptions and presumptions that are there and examining our own conclusions, preformed conclusions in the light of the teachings. That is self-reflection. Yeah. So with all that, we arrive at the clarity and we try to align every aspect of our life according to that clarity. That becomes invocation, adoration, and dedication, where I said living a life of dharma itself is worship of Ishvara. Right? Whenever we invoke a universal value, we are invoking the Supreme Being. And whenever we are appreciating that value, we are practicing adoration, bhakti. And whenever we are placing that universal value at the level of importance that is more than my likes and dislikes and my personal preferences, my sense of immediate comfort and pleasure, when that value becomes more important than all this, then it is dedication. Right? So I explained that, we discussed that in the last class. So I'm just recapping that. Right? So that is life of dharma, that is karma. So when we live like that, what happens? I become naturally aligned in all levels. I gather my sense of self, I feel together as a person. When I am living in a righteous way, the karma part is taken care. Also, when we are, if it can be combined with uh, some kind of some kind of aids for contemplation like puja, etc., we are involving the five senses connected to the upasana. So before we choose a upasana, what happens? We have to gather ourselves by living in the right way. So this karma, upasana, jnana, this path is there in almost every tradition that I have come across. If you go to Buddhism, there is Shila, Samadhi, Prajna. Shila is karma, Samadhi, contemplation, upasana, Prajna is jnana. They may not mean it in that way, but this krama, this sequence of self-growth, this sequence of spiritual progress, it is, and I will call it as the sequence of spiritual progress, is always in this three levels: karma, upasana, jnana. Now, karma forms the base which makes you ready for upasana. So, when we gather ourselves and become a very completely aligned person with minimal internal conflict, when we are completely aligned as a person at all levels, when there is no dichotomy, karmanyekam, vachasyekam, manasyekam, they say, mahatmanam. So when we become each of us become a mahatma, when we are aligned towards one thing, physically, mentally, and verbally. Karmanyekam, physically in our actions, vachasyekam in our speech, mentally, manasyekam in our thinking, in our actions, in our speech, in our thinking, when we are completely aligned, in our intentions and actions are aligned, then we become together as a person. And to practice contemplation, it will become very, very easy to practice contemplation. So when you sit to concentrate on any object of meditation, any kind of meditative practice that you do, your ability to concentrate and bring the mind together towards that object of meditation in the meditative process will become effortless. It will become very easy, and the mind will flow like, like this oil, or what they say, like the thaila dhara. When you pour a good quality oil from a ladle, when you pour it back into the vessel, when a small thin stream of oil without gap, right? So like that, the mind will flow without conflict, without any kind of chalana, without any kind of disturbance towards the direction of meditation, the object of meditation. All the thoughts, the intentions, the emotions, the the flow of memories, everything will be aligned towards the goal of your meditation that you have chosen upon. That is, which is upasana. So the karma makes us ready for upasana. Invocation, adoration, and dedication, which is what I meant by the word karma, gets us ready for contemplation, which is upasana. So when we are able to go into, when we are able to choose a contemplative practice, there are various levels of contemplative practices, Thula, Sukshma, and all that. So in Samadhi Pada of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is a huge discussion on various kinds of samadhi. Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savikalpa, Nirvikalpa, Savichara, Nirvichara, Savitarka, Nirvitarka, Savichara, Nirvichara, Sabija, Nirbija, like that. There are various levels being talked about. So, as long as we are not going into a specific contemplative practice, it is all just theory. Let's not bother about that. The idea is to start. So, basically, what is usually called as a sthula dhyana or a gross or a gross form of meditation. Gross is an English word. Sthula is not gross. Sthula is more like a form-based meditation. Okay, so let us call it as a form-based meditation. A more concrete, I will put it as a more concrete type of meditation is usually on a divine form. You take the, when you take the form of Lord Shiva, there is usually the form that is recommended is like Panchavaktra Shiva. Or, when you have visited a nice temple like Chidambaram Nataraja, you bring that in your mind. Or you have visited Arunachala, you bring the mountain in the mind. Or you like or you have a very deep connection with a very saintly, liberated person, like Sri Ramana Maharshi, for example. So you bring up his form. You just concentrate and meditate on his form. Usually you can choose your heart, the center of the chest inside, or you can choose the eyebrow center. These two are better. Top of the head is recommended, but generally you need a high level of Nadi Shuddhi to do that. So you choose one of these points and you bring up that form in one of these points and just think about the person. Allow all your feelings to flow towards that form that you are visualizing. Whatever words come, you mentally, you repeat their name or a mantra, all that, slowly allow the mind to gather around that visualization. Right. So it is a combination of visualization and attitude. It's a combination of visualization and attitude. So from Stula, when we go to Sukshma, we usually move from the form to the meaning that the form represents. Whatever value or the meaning or the concept that is represented by the form, we move towards that and we leave the form. We let go of the form. We are not focused on the form anymore. Once the mind gathers itself around the form, from there we move to the subtler level of what the form represents, the meaning, and then we contemplate on that. And then from there we, once the mind, one pointedness is there, and from there we go into contemplating on the meaning of the words of Vedanta. So that comes later. The contemplation is usually Stula or Sukshma, right? So that is when we do that. These are called Vidyas. In Upanishads, these are called Vidyas. In the Upasana Khanda or the Upasana portion, the contemplative portion of the Upanishads, all the Upanishads have a contemplative portion. Panchagni Vidya. Like that, we have different Vidyas, Madhu Vidya, and you have this uh, Omkara Upasana, Pranava Upasana. Like that, you have various Upasanas and Vidyas in our Upanishad. Each Upanishad has a thing. And then there is the Jnana. Now, we have to remember karma and upasana. Karma is nothing but being active in external life. Karma is action. Upasana is also action, but it's action purely at the mental level, where you are using the mind and gathering the mental energies together in one direction, right? Which makes the mind ready for contemplation, makes the mind ready for understanding the meaning of the words of Vedanta, which tells the teaching, which tells how you are Brahman, you are that supreme being, which makes you understand that you are the liberation, right? So when we listen to that, when we think according to the prakriya, according to the methodology of analysis of understanding the meaning of the words of Vedanta, when you understand that, understanding happens in such a complete way, it resonates throughout your system at all levels. There is no scattered self that is lost in the habit. So there is no falling back into habit pattern. So that person who has completely gathered oneself before listening to Vedanta, the one who has come through the process of karma and upasana and is totally ready for the wisdom of Vedanta, is called the highest qualified person, Uttama Adhikari. Right? Usually they are, uh, most of us won't come in that category. We are usually Madhyama Adhikari or Adhama Adhikari. So that is why even after repeatedly hearing the Vedanta, nothing enters. First of all, the attitude towards Vedanta is not there. And then there is the scattered self and all that. Avarana, Vikshepa, whatever. All the blocks, what we call as Pratibandhaka, it is called. The various cognitive and habitual blocks that prevent Vedanta from having its desired effect on our head. Yeah? So this karma, upasana, jnana. So this process of gathering ourselves happens through a life, righteous life, combined with bhakti, devotion, and the practices, contemplative practices of upasana. So we need not wait for our life to be perfectly spiritually aligned to start upasana. So when it comes to this threefold process, which I presented in the 5 steps of invocation, adoration, dedication, and contemplation, is karma, and transitioning into upasana and realization, which is jnana. This karma, upasana, and jnana, when I say that, we don't have to postpone the practice of upasana until everything in my life becomes perfect. That is not required. All of this can go on in parallel. You don't have to wait to be able, like that cattle herd boy whom Sage Narada said, and who attained Sabikalpa Samadhi meditating on the buffalo. So you don't have to wait until your mind is capable of Sabikalpa Samadhi. You don't have to wait until that. It's all right. Everything helps everything. This uh, so-called integral yoga that they talk about, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, and all that, without their knowledge, and without putting it in a proper way, they're putting it in a clumsy way. But this is what they're telling. Karma, upasana, and jnana, all 3 aspects are, you try to practice all these 3 aspects and bring all these 3 aspects in your everyday life in order to facilitate a accelerated and a complete process of spiritual growth. So you don't have to wait until your life is perfect in order to start meditating. Keep perfecting the way of life, keep spiritualizing the way of life, and allot some time for contemplative practices. And as you're allotting time for contemplative practices, also study a little bit and think about the truth of existence in the light of whatever you have learned. Spend some time trying to understand. So jnana, let it also go on, right? So that will keep refining your thinking, and that will keep shaping your attitude, that will help you in your karma. And all this will also help you in the contemplation. The ability of the mind to gather itself together during meditation will become better. So all these 3 dimensions of spiritual practice, karma, upasana, and jnana, can go on simultaneously. Though ideally it is a kind of practice. So what happens is, over a period of time, the life that is predominantly karma, with a little bit of upasana and very, very little bit of jnana, will start transforming into very less of karma and more of upasana, and little more of jnana, and then it will move to predominantly jnana and just a little bit of upasana and almost nothing, no kind of, no, almost minimal karma just for survival kind of karma, and uh, some basic little bit of upasana to help gather, keep the mind disciplined, and predominantly jnana. The life will move like that. Predominantly jnana means basically your practice is nididhyasana, nothing else. So that is what the sannyasis usually do. The Paramahamsa sannyasis generally do only nididhyasana and pranava upasana, contemplation. And there is no there are no religious duties and other obligations, social or family obligations for that. Yeah? So now it is not about ritualistically taking and becoming a formal sannyasi. I am talking about the level of, I gave it as an example. The level of progress and how we go, we can decide for ourselves. The external lifestyle of whether to be a sannyasi or not to be a sannyasi, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all meaningless. All institutions are corrupt. So if it is there in your prarabdha karma, in your destiny to become a formal sannyasi and all the right paraphernalia just come to you. If it happens, fine. If it doesn't happen, fine. So one need not work towards that, but one has to be aware of this sequence of progress from invocation to realization, from karma to jnana. So this is common, this sequence of progress is common in all traditions. I was talking to somebody who had exposure to Carpathian mysticism. When I was in Romania, I was talking to mystics there, Carpathian mysticism, and then I was reading one text called Philokalia. In the, it is practiced by the monks in the Mount of Athos and all that. It's all combined with it. These are all pre-Christian contemplative traditions which the Christianity adopted into itself. The monastic tradition of Christianity adapted into itself. Usually the Eastern Orthodox, the Coptics, they all adopt more of these things. So I don't know about the, probably at the cardinal level in the Catholics they do, but they don't seem to have this mystic energy. I have seen this mystic energy in the uh, among the Orthodox and the Coptics. The Carpathian mysticism, and I read, it is exactly that, the transition from, see, the religious life, living an righteous life and being a good Christian, going to the church and all those things comes under karma, religious life. You go to any religion, the popular religious life that is told for the masses, that is followed by the masses, and all the various religious and cultural practices connected with the religion, all of that comes under karma. That kind of helps you from not being dissipated into things like this left liberal ideas and this kind of total rationality where we are without any kind of spiritual basis, where you talk about postmodernism, uh, this relativistic morality and all those moral relativism, all those things, when you talk about all that, where basically you are what, that is what exactly what this left liberal thing is, what Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita as samshayatma vinashyati. That person will have no sukha in this life, not no sukha in the afterlife. So that's what this is basically about. It's all this talk about gender fluidity and all those things that are coming and taking over a big portion of the human consciousness in the West now. It's also showing its ugly head in India. So all these problems is because this religious life saves you from this. So, and it gathers you as a person. You are able to gather. You are not constantly struggling between one goal and another goal in the dream. You just gather yourself in one direction. Even though it is not based on Shastra, a religious life of a common man helps that person gather himself. His desire or ridden mind, the various as personal aspirations, the ego structure, everything gathers together. And then the mystic practices of prayer, praying ceaselessly, they have this prayer of the heart and all those things, and slowly it goes into contemplation, where they have the upasana concept. They exactly have the upasana concept, where they superimpose a higher idea on something that is a normal thing. They superimpose a higher ideal on a normal thing, and then they contemplate on it, they meditate on it, they visualize themselves in certain ways, they visualize certain the forms that they consider as divine and all that. That goes on. And then they don't have the jnana, they end up with upasana, and then they are hoping for some kind of mystic revelation of uh, the mystery of God, they say. So they don't have a body of knowledge like how we have Vedanta. They don't have a body of knowledge that clearly gives jnana, but they do have some kind of a gnostic insight that they don't want to talk about because they don't have a body of knowledge to talk about that. They call it as the great mystery, and then they just leave it like that. So they take you from karma to upasana, and then they leave it to the force of grace to take over. That is about the Carpathian mystics and the mystic traditions, the contemplative traditions in the West. Then you take Buddhism. You have Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna, Karma, Upasana, Jnana. You take any tradition inside India, the agamic tradition, Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktam, Kaumaram, Skandam, Sauram, Ganapatyam, or you take the Vedic traditions, Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, and all that. Even in a Vedic ritual, you have somebody who is doing the contemplation on the deity. So there is Upasana concepts. It comes in the Upasana also. When you say you are a Sri Vidya Upasaka, you have Navavarana Puja and all those things which comes under karma. And at the end of the karma, you are meditating on the form of the Devi. Then you are meditating on the subtle form of the Devi as the mantra swarupam. When you read Sri Bhaskaracharya's commentaries, you understand the various forms of the Devi. Devi as in the stula form of, like how you can visualize the Lalitambika, and then you have the mantra swarupam of the Devi, then you have the Kundalini Rupam of the Devi, then you have the cosmic form of the Devi, then you have the mantra of the Devi seen as the representation of the Tattvamasi Mahavakya. So like that you have different levels, and that takes you from Upasana to Jnana. Similarly, you have in Shaiva's tradition, Shaiva Agama tradition. Similarly, you have in the Vaishnava Agama tradition. Of course, they go into Vishishtadvaita, and then they have their contemplative practices there. But this sequence of karma, upasana, and jnana is universal. It is the universal structure of spiritual growth from bondage to liberation. If you don't understand jnana, it is all right, but it is very important to gather yourself together in a way of life that is governed by the rules of dharma, which is karma, and empower yourself to be able to follow that with the least amount of conflict. So upasana or contemplative practices give us the inner strength necessary to stick to the dharma against the inner temptations and the other distractions that come in our external life. And some kind of exposure to Vedanta will keep you on track, not get lost in delightful spiritual experiences, not get lost in some kind of romantic, fantastic spiritual dreams, like how you read in these books like Autobiography of a Yogi. This kind of spiritual distractions you will not have. Go into some kind of spiritual romanticism, looking for some extraordinary experiences. These are all distractions, going for Kundalini ecstasy or special experiences, excessively manipulating your prana. All these problems you will not get into, because your direction, you are having the right direction and the focus that is set by the basic study of Vedanta that supports your upasana, and also supports your spiritualized way of life that is in line with the universal dharma. So that is basically the line of progress. So this is what I was explaining in a very simple way: karma, upasana, and jnana, using the 5-step process of invocation, adoration, dedication, contemplation, and realization. Up to dedication is basically devotion or bhakti. Invocation, adoration, and dedication becomes bhakti. When bhakti comes in every aspect of our active life, it becomes karma. All the karma becomes karma yoga. And you are ready for Raja Yoga, which is upasana. And then Jnana Yoga or Jnana, which is basically Atma Vichara, guided by a proper teacher who knows how to disseminate the essence of Vedanta. So this is the whole spiritual track. If you see the Upadesha Saram of Ramana Maharshi, when you read, it talks about the same thing. Karmam payantaral kartana daanayal karmam kadavulo undipara karmam jadamadalundi para. There is a song, Trajnaya karyamuttamam pujanam japa chintanam kramar. There is all this Upadesha Saram or Upadesha Undiyar, it is called. It takes you from karma, upasana to jnana. You read Sadhana Panchakam of Sri Adi Shankaracharya. It takes you from karma to upasana, from to jnana. Vedo nityam adiyatam taduditam karmasvanushtiyatam tene shashya vidhiyatam apachiti hip kamye madistajyatam papa ugaf paridhuyatam bhavasuke doshonusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam jagrhat turnam vinirgamyatam. Then sangas satya vidhiyatam bhagavatah bhaktir dridhadiyatam talks about upasana. Shantyadif parichiyatam dridataram karmasu santirjatam. It takes you step by step, karma, upasana, jnana. The same, if you go to Viveka Chudamani, it takes you the same way. If you read any text that takes you from common man religious life towards a mystically oriented, or mystic here does not mean mystery. Mystic means a more contemplative life that is dominated by meditation, meditative practices, right? It takes you from a common religious life to a mystic spiritual life towards inquiry and enlightenment. All this follow the same trajectory. So this in essence is the entire growth trajectory of spiritual life. So if you use this as a framework, basic framework of thinking about what you are doing, what you are learning, how to keep your life, different aspects of your life, your practices, your yoga practice, your diet practices, your religious practices, how to keep everything in line with this goal and keep it all aligned in this direction of true spiritual progress that is tuned to the ultimate goal of liberation, which is actually your own nature. If you use this as a framework, you can avoid all kinds of confusion and always be on track and never lose track. So if there is any questions regarding what we discussed, or if there are any questions from the last classes, you may post the question now. Or if you have any questions based on your personal practices that you want to ask, I think we have room for one question, one or two questions. You can unmute and ask the question, or type your question in the chat. After learning and understanding what to do and what not to do, how to relieve oneself from the feel of guilt after doing an action which is not to be done. Excellent. Also, how to come out of an addiction, irrelevant of good or bad. There is no good addiction. Addiction is fundamentally bad because addiction is not about what you are doing. Addiction is about your attitude, or your attitude behind that action. It is about your sense of value that got messed up in relation with the action. Your sense of value connected to the action, it's not aligned with reality, but rather that action and its consequence is aligned with personal comfort. That's what makes it addiction. So whenever you notice an addiction, try to bring more objectivity based on common sense standards. That's the first. By common sense, what is the right approach? What are the limits to it? What is the healthy level and what is the unhealthy level? Just based on common sense and scientific understanding, and if required, you can bring the knowledge of the Shastra if it is required. For example, I'll tell you a good addiction. What is considered as a good addiction? It is not good. As I said, no addiction is good. I know a woman who is a very religious, devoted woman. So she feels a lot of things towards various forms, and somehow over a period of time, a lot of God pictures gathered in her house, right? Okay, they have some like 40, 50 pictures in the house. Puja room is full of different pictures. Muruga means Lord Muruga will be like 5 or 10 Murugas some 5 or 10 Ganeshas, 5 or 10 Shivas. So she'll be offering flowers, right, to all of them. It takes 1 hour wasting the time. So you put flowers for each one. So you put a smaller flower for one Shiva, same Shiva, right? She puts a smaller flower for one Ganesha and another Ganesha gets a bigger flower. She will think that big Ganesh, that other Ganesha who got bigger small flower will feel bad because the other Ganesha got big flower. It might sound cute, but after a point, it's not cute. It's actually stupid. And this gives a lot of psychological stress for this woman. She doesn't understand that. Then a lot of time goes on giving right justice to each god. It's not each god. It's not even 5 god. There are like 5-10 pictures of every god. This is completely nuts. So this is a certain kind of addiction because she is superimposing her own fancies upon that space where she invokes the divine. So the space called puja room where the divine is invoked is not arranged according to any shastra. This is where the shastra comes in. Shastra says panchayatana puja, so that you don't have bheda bhav, means you don't have this discriminating attitude between one form of God and another form of God. So you have the concept called panchayatana puja given by Shankaracharya. One can follow that, or one can follow that is where the tradition comes. So according to the tradition, if you do the puja, you don't have all this problem. You have a representation for your Kula Devata, you have a representation for your Ishta Devata, and all that, but you understand all of that is the same God. You will not have all this problem. And you will not have the same, if you are a devotee of some guru, you will not have that guru's photo, 100 photos all over the house. These are all coming from, because when we approach divine space, I understand that we have insecurities, we have all these things inside us. But instead of coming from there, we need to make an effort to come towards that in a more objective way that is based on an external standard that is not dictated by our feelings. Then we have to regulate our feelings according to the external standard, right? So having said that, come out of an addiction, basically, even for a bad, I used a so-called good addiction as an example. For a bad addiction, we have to see what there are 2 levels. There is a psychological level and then there is a physiological level. Maybe I can talk more about this in the next class, coming out of addictions and what practices can help. I'll go more in detail. I will set this as the base for the next class. But right now we have to understand there are physiological aspects and psychological aspects. So based on the kind of addiction, at the level of addiction, in which level, we have to take the appropriate measures and come out of the addiction. And it is usually better when the addiction is very strong to get external help. Satsanga, a specialist, a professional de-addiction specialist if required. If you are addicted to alcohol or something, it is better to go through a proper de-addiction mechanism and support group like Alcoholics Anonymous, etc. These are all common sense, common sense interventions, and see how professionally, how the experts are telling us to handle the addiction. Always seek expert advice and a company of those who are not addicted, and avoiding the company of those who reinforce your addiction. Avoiding the company of those who reinforce your addiction. They are dussanga. Those who help you to overcome the addiction are satsanga in this case. And that's how you overcome addiction. We'll go more deep into this. But as of now, relieving oneself from the feeling of guilt after doing an action which is not to be done. In this case, one of the best remedies is to do what is called prayaschitta. First, do not justify. If you feel guilty about an action, do not justify it rationally. For example, somebody goes through an abortion. Don't justify it rationally. Rationally, logic is a double-edged sword. It can justify any action. It can also implicate any action. So it can make the good look bad, the bad look good. Logic is always used as a tool according to the correct kind of Shraddha. I have already discussed this. I also use the example of that Vijnanamaya Kosha vision, the visualization that is given in Taittiriya Upanishad. Vijnanamaya Atma, Shraddhaiva Shiraha, Rudam Dakshina Pakshaha, Satyam Uttara Pakshaha, like that. I have, based on that, Yoga Atma, Mahat Pratishtha. Based on that, I had given an explanation in one of the long back. Maybe, we can go into that later. But for now, logic is supposed to be used according to the most natural dharmic commitment that you have. I will put it like that. The most natural dharmic commitment which you have is what is generating this guilt. So you will have to own up that dharmic commitment which is the reason for this guilt, and completely own up that action which is not to be done, and see what you can do as prayaschitta or neutralizing karma. One action is done by another action, right? For example, one goes through an abortion. Probably one can sponsor a poor person's pregnancy treatment and the treatment expenses that are required for a healthy delivery, medical expenses like that, or sponsor a poor child in an orphanage, or adopt a child, these kind of things. I'm just giving a very simple example, common sense example. So what if it is a spiritual thing? Probably one can consult a saintly person or a guru that one who looks up to. If you look up to a master, a saintly person, a priest, family priest, or some acharya, somebody, when you look up to them and you have a lot of respect for them, you can ask the expert advice on what could be the prayaschitta or the expiatory action for neutralizing the wrong action which generates guilt in you. Then you follow it. You follow their advice and do it sincerely, right? And when you do that sincerely, with Shraddha, and you have, can tell yourself that, okay, I have done the prayaschitta, so it is taken care. So the whole point is Shraddha here and not logical mind. So you use the logic only to see how you can do the neutralizing action. It is very, very important to own up the guilt and to own up the commitment that has caused the guilt and act according to the dharmic commitment because of which you feel guilty, and reinforce that commitment through certain actions called prayaschitta, in English expiatory actions, right? So that is the best way to relieve oneself from the guilt after doing an action which is not to be done. And also depends on who you are. This is the most broad spectrum relevant thing for everybody. For sannyasis and for others it is different, so I am talking about something that is relevant for people at all levels. Yeah. So with this I will finish the class. We will meet again in the next class and deal with your questions. Especially we will go deep into this addiction thing in the next class. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.
Thank you.